Me now is Republican Representative Jeb Hensarling. He's a chairman of the Financial Services Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for being here. I want to talk about the government shutdown in a minute, but let's talk about the debt ceiling, which I think we can all agree is probably a more dire situation if we were going to actually default on our loans. What do you need? What do House Republicans need to agree to raise the debt ceiling and pay the bills that Congress already racked up?
Well, the first thing we need to do is have the president sign the Full Faith and Credit Act, H.R. 807.
That would do what?
What it would do would ensure that the United States of America could never default on its debt. That bonds, federal bonds, we would always pay interest and principal. We've already passed it in the House. All we need is for Harry Reid to take it up and for the president to sign it. That's the good news. The bad news is the president's already issued a veto threat. So, Jake, it's hard to come to any other conclusion besides that the president somehow wants to keep this hostage for his spending agenda and his other legislative priorities. So, House Republicans...
What's the reason he gave for the veto threat? Why won't he sign? I'm not familiar with this legislation, so why won't he sign?
Well, Americans ought to be familiar with this legislation because, again, it is absolutely inexcusable for the United States to ever default on sovereign debt. It would have cataclysmic events.
So why not just raise the debt ceiling? I don't understand. These are
why
bills.
Why not ensure it ever happens? I don't know. I don't speak for the president. I suppose we could go ask him.
But does it institute automatic spending cuts? What's the reason he opposes it?
Nope. It simply takes it off the calculation. It takes it off the calculation. So again, you would have to ask him, and I encourage you to ask people in the White House why they won't take up this legislation, and then we would never have to worry about it. But here's the deal. I mean, the Constitution says it is Congress that has the power of the purse. And what House Republicans feel is it's not the power of the purse. The president wants us to have the power of the rubber stamp. But in an economy with tens of millions, underemployed, lackluster economic growth, at a time where we've had more debt in 4 years than our nation's first 200, no. House Republicans are not going to rubber stamp what the president is going to do. We're ready to negotiate, but I think we're through negotiating with ourselves, and we've yet to have the President of the United States, or Senator Harry Reid said, we'll sit down and negotiate economic growth and a road away from bankruptcy.
The Senate passed a budget in March, and the House has refused to send conferees to sort it out.
We've got conferees appointed now. Happy to talk about the budget.
You have conferees to talk about the government shutdown.
Happy to bring on the budget. But you're talking about an institution that disobeyed the law for 4 years running, didn't even pass a budget. Now they're going to lecture us about procedure. I find that a little bit ironic.
Let's move on to the government shutdown. The House Republicans are now setting a precedent, and I want to know, how will you feel in this hypothetical I'm about to throw out? Democrats control the House, Republicans control the Senate and the White House. Democrats say, we're not going to fund the government, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling unless you agree to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% up to 50%. That's a fair tactic with you.
Well, again, Congress has the power of the purse. What I would hope is they would sit down and negotiate in good faith, which is what we have offered to do. I mean, House Republicans...
You want to take away the president's signature legislation. You're doing it the way you're doing it with the government shutdown and with the debt ceiling potentially, because you don't have the votes in the Senate to do it.
Well, there's two different issues here. Number one, let's talk about the president's signature legislation. No, Republicans are never going to give up on trying to have patient-centered health care for America, not government-controlled health care.
But we're not talking about that right now. I'm not even talking about Obamacare.
You brought it up.
It's a good debate to have, but we're talking about the tactic. We're not debating Obamacare, because I'd be happy to debate Obamacare, and we've done shows on it, and we'll be talking later in the show about the rollout of Obamacare. But we're talking about the tactic of House Republicans saying, we don't like this law, we don't have the votes to get rid of it in the Senate, so we're going to force the government to shut down.
Okay, but let me finish. Number one, we have already offered continuing resolutions to keep the government open that I would think even your network would admit probably funds 98 to 99% of what the administration has asked for. That's my first point. My second point was, Democrats worked for probably 2 generations to get their health care bill, and Republicans are just supposed to shut up after 3 years? I don't think so. Listen, I understand how the law is written, and without Obama's signature, Obamacare is not going away. So we put 4 different offers on the table, Jake. I think you know this. And the last one simply said, listen, we don't believe in Obamacare, but if it's the law of the land, apply it equally to all Americans. Don't give labor unions and big business a 1-year reprieve that you're not going to give
individual
workers.
mandate for a year.
And, if there's anything that makes Americans cynical, it's Washington elites passing laws that they are unwilling to live under. Why wasn't the president the first one to sign up for Obamacare? Why isn't the president, the vice president, the cabinet, the White House subject to this? Members of Congress are, but then they at first were going to be the only Americans to have an employer contribution in the individual market. Now they've moved us to the small business market. I don't know if this is legal, but Americans believe that if we're going to have Obamacare, it at least ought to be applied equally. No special deals. And so that's what we're asking for.
I want to talk about that, and I want to give you a chance to respond, because PolitiFact looked into what you have said about the quote-unquote special exemption. PolitiFact said it's a pants-on-fire lie. They say, quote, your statement is wrong in almost every regard, and the issue has been largely driven by Republicans, not by the Obama administration. The members of Congress, especially Speaker Boehner, has been well reported, was pushing for the ability for members of Congress to at least offer some sort of stipend to staffers to help pay for Obamacare if they are forced into these exchanges.
Listen, at the time I made any statement about this, OPM, which I don't believe is doing it in a legal fashion, said that members of Congress were going to be the only people in the individual pool who had an employer contribution. That's a fact. So I'm unfamiliar with what these people are saying.
Both PolitiFact and the National Review, the National Review, hardly a liberal publication, have said, the National Review says that people who happen to be paid by the federal treasury don't deserve to have the entire value of their existing coverage stripped away, as almost no Americans will experience.
That's a different issue. We can debate whether or not members of Congress ought to have an employer contribution, but my point was that members of Congress were going to be the only Americans who were going to have an employer contribution in the individualized pool. Again, now they've moved us to the small business. Last I looked, Congress wasn't a small business. I don't know if that's legal or not. I suspect it's not. I just want to make sure that people in Washington live under the same laws, but there's a more important issue, and that is, why isn't the White House in this? Why isn't the cabinet? Why isn't the president? Why isn't the vice president? But the bigger issue is that we're willing to negotiate. You know, bottom line is, the American people gave Democrats the White House, gave them the Senate, but they gave the House to Republicans. They expect in divided government for people to sit down and work out their differences. We want to work with the Democrats to promote economic growth, to get our people back to work. And we have got to, you know, we can't wait till tomorrow, Jake. We can't wait till tomorrow to deal with this cycle of debt. It's not just a fiscal issue.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
It's a moral issue, and I say that not just as a member of Congress. I say that as the father of a 10-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter.
You're talking about Obamacare. You're trying to get rid of Obamacare.
No, that's not true. That is not true.
And by the way, your own budget keeps the savings, the deficit savings, from Obamacare.
No, we bring it into the budget to ensure the solvency of the program that was rated to pay for Obamacare. This is what this is all about. Again, what we're asking for is, one, we want to negotiate. Obviously, the other party doesn't want to negotiate, and we know that the White House cynically said yesterday, and I understand they're trying to walk it back, but in one moment of candor, they said, we don't care how long the government shut down.
We talked about that earlier.
We don't care how long the government shut down lasts, as long as we're winning politically. I'm not sure that's the way the American people view it.
Well, I look forward to covering this when President Hensarling is dealing with a Democratic House holding the, you know, refusing to pass government spending until you raise our taxes.
You clearly know something I don't know and my wife doesn't know.
All right. Thank you, Congressman Hensarling. I appreciate